Hello everybody, I'm Cantonese Cat. Hey everybody, Cantonese Cat. I didn't even know that you guys can already comment before I come on. I figured I'd just do a live stream here real quick. Talk about miners. The first thing I want to talk about is going to be CleanSpark. I know somebody want to take a little bit look at Bitfarms. I don't do fundamentals, man. I'm gonna take a better look at the technicals on all the miners. I'm kind of gonna tell you. I'm more like a trend cat. Um, what you're seeing here is the monthly chart of CleanSpark. Let's just go and start with that. A lot of people are starting to get scared as they were very euphoric a couple, just back in January, February when price just shot up way too fast, right? And now we've just kind of gone sideways over here. The question is this bull trend exhausted, and are we going to roll over soon? That's always the biggest question. Are we having a very similar look over here as we are over here, where we could just continue to roll over for another 2 years, right? That's the biggest question that a lot of people have. The answer to that is I don't think anybody actually knows. I'm going to show you. I don't think this is the same as that. I'm going to try to show as to why I think that is. First of all, CleanSpark, the underlying asset that's supposed to correlate to is Bitcoin. We have made a lot of Bitcoin videos. I even made one with Charting Guy from yesterday. He's a very, very smart guy. We really went through the case as to why I don't think that the Bitcoin cycle, and neither does he, think that the Bitcoin cycle is over. There could be a little bit more correction. Even there's a correction, I actually think that miners are actually going to outperform Bitcoin, as crazy as it sounds, because fundamentally speaking, post-halving, you actually think that financially they're going to have taken a hit, right? But actually, the technicals are showing otherwise. I wonder whether or not the bearish momentum has front-ran the halving, whereas the effects of halving are kind of already expected about 3 to 6 months, ahead. So I'm going to show you, some of the technicals as to why I think that this over here is not the same as over there. First thing I did show you before is the Ichimoku cloud. The Ichimoku cloud comes with all these different lines in the cloud over here. Each of these lines can serve as resistance and support. From before, you can see that this bull flag that broke down all the way down like this, it really was hitting a lot of these monthly resistance, like the Kijun over here was hitting resistance. It was kind of using the Tengen here as support, but it broke down underneath, back tested, failed to hold, and then actually had a bullish cross, but price was way underneath of that, and they had a bearish cross, back tested the Tengen Kijun and failed, right? Over here is a little bit of different morphology here. You had a bullish cross in February 2024. And since then, price has been consolidating between the cloud and the Tengen line over here. It looks like it wants to break through. Like, this is a very, very different situation as it was over here in terms of support and resistance levels. One thing, though, you're going to get scared by a lot of people, especially a guy out there. I'm not going to name names, but there's a guy out there who likes to use these like wave trend oscillators. And they're going to scare you that this wave trend oscillator looks like it's going to roll over here as opposed to over here. They're going to say that these two are very, very similar. Although you're going to see throughout history, like stocks and crypto, you're going to see these kinds of things. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a huge downtrend like it did over here, right? First of all, I don't think that Bitcoin cycle is over. Second of all, let's look at Bitcoin. Like, you're going to see some guy out there that's going to show a wave trend oscillator like this, and you're pointing, oh, look at here, it's like the same. Well, there are other situations where you have a very similar morphology over here, and you can have a bearish cross of the wave trend, and things just kept on going up too, right? Here you got very close to a bear trend over here, and things just kept going up. Over here, you had a bearish cross over here, and things just went up like 14 times, like from over here over here. So I wouldn't let that scare you. If you're talking about like a lot of different stocks from the past, like Amazon, you're gonna see these kinds of things over and over again. As price just kept on going up like for decades, you're gonna seeing like these rolling over kind of thing over and over again. And when it rolls over, sometimes the correction can be quite mild. Like, it's not the end of the world, and this is a monthly chart, right? So I don't want you to really get scared by a lot of these people out there. They're talking smack. Matter of fact, I'm going to show you as to why I think that CleanSpark could outperform Bitcoin. I'm going to show you pretty much all the miners that I'm seeing could potentially be outperforming Bitcoin soon. One reason is if you actually look at the wave trend oscillator on this CleanSpark over Bitcoin chart, which basically is a ratio of CleanSpark over Bitcoin, you can actually see that there's a bullish cross is about to happen. It looks like CleanSpark wants to outperform Bitcoin pretty soon, which is kind of crazy to think about. Last time when you had a cross like that happening, like price really shot up from from very, very low to all the way up here. You're talking about this is what, like November 2023. So you're talking about November 2023, and it shot up from like $3 all the way to like $25, right? So I think we have similarly have maybe a little bit of a bullish crossover here for this CleanSpark over BTC chart. So I do think that a lot of the miners are going to end up probably outperforming Bitcoin for the upcoming months. I'm just going to jump right to like Mara. You see the same thing, you have the bullish crossover here on the monthly. So I think Mara is probably going to outperform Bitcoin. Looks like Bitfarms doing the same thing. Looks like CIFR is doing the same thing. Looks like IREN's already doing the same thing. Looks like WULF's already doing the same thing, right? Like I don't have to tell you these because IREN and WULF has been beasting over the last couple of months, and you already knew that. So yeah, I went through MSTR a couple of days ago, so I'm not going to go through MSTR today. But please feel free to look at the video that I did live stream just on Friday after market close. So nothing has really changed for MSTR. I'm going to go through a little bit of the CleanSpark chart here, do a little bit more of a deep dive in terms of what I'm seeing here. And to do that, I would like to put up the weekly chart. I unfortunately don't have much to say with the exception. I think I just show you, I think CleanSpark is going to outperform Bitcoin. Even looking at the weekly chart, you put up the Ichimoku cloud, it looks like it's, it looks like it's just been forming a flag and about to hit the cloud soon and bounce up. And if I just look at CleanSpark chart by itself, it's just been stuck in the range between the tank and the blue line and the kitchen and the red line over here. It's just been stuck in this range for like months, ready to break out. Like how people are really super scared early in the week when it just dipped all the way down underneath to like $15, and it's stuck in the range, so it's probably going to end up closing back above, right? Just like people might have gotten a little bit more euphoric a few weeks ago when things got up to like 20 something, and sure enough got rejected. We just haven't had that breakout quite just yet. Bollinger Band is telling us that something big's probably going to happen, and right now it's stuck in a range. It's stuck inside a bull market support band, which is the 20-week SMA and 21-week EMA. So you're basically just stuck in a range, but Bollinger Band is squeezing pretty hard. I don't think I've seen CleanSpark Bollinger Band squeeze that hard for like ever. So bigger moves probably going to come, and if there's anything that I can tell you, well, you're 100% in CleanSpark. That's pretty amazing. If anything that the chart's going to tell you is that the big move's going to come, is it going to be down first and up, or is it just going to be up? Is really hard to say. All I can say is I think that it does look like CleanSpark's probably going to end up outperforming Bitcoin for the foreseeable future. So, which that means that if Bitcoin is to drop further, CleanSpark may actually not drop as much because it is stuck in the range. Right? The risk level, I would still say around like 13, 14. I think that's probably how far it would go down to before going up, but it doesn't have to go down. It could just kind of go up from here, right? The let's see here. Yeah, I try to draw again, and again, it's not really too entirely helpful. It's just stuck inside the arc. It's somewhere in the middle. I would like to see it break above the 0.382 Fibonacci level, 17.35, and you still have a lot of resistance above. You're talking about like a lot of resistance at like 20s, really all the way up to high 20s, around 27, 28, 29 is going to be a resistance level over there. If you're able to break above that level though, and if things just get really parabolic, it could potentially hit like the 60s and 70s and 80s here in a hurry before you see like some really strong resistance up here. But we're still underneath resistance. We're still stuck in a range. There's still potential for it to go down before going up, right? There's entirely possibility for it to come down and hit the arc right there, which is going to be around like anywhere around 13 to 14 before bouncing up further. There's always a possibility that it go down and break down and things like that. Depends on what Bitcoin does. So far, I'm still more bullish on Bitcoin, and IWM looks like it's having a pretty decent breakout. So I have a biased to think, I think this is probably going to end up breaking above. And you might be looking at some of the targets up above here over the next, 12 months or so. Could be higher, could hit up like to 150 or something like that, and that could be the end of the cycle. I don't know. But right now, you're still underneath a bunch of resistance down here. So I can't really say for sure, but I like the way the chart looks, and I'm not going to let, people to really try to scare me too much, because I still see good things about this chart. And that's CleanSpark. Going straight to Mars, going to the monthly chart. Well, what do you see here on the monthly? The first thing you do is you put the Ichimoku. You can see it's still stuck in the range. Its top part of range over here is around 21. Bottom part of range is around 18.5. So it's still stuck in the range, and it's going to be more clear if I pull up the Super Ichi cloud. It's going to be stuck in the range over here between 24 and 16. That's where it looks like it's been doing. And it's been doing that for more than half a year now. So we're just waiting for it to break above the range. But I do think that things are going to be more bullish moving forward, because I do think that, if you look at the MAR over Bitcoin chart and you put up the wave trend oscillator, it does look like we have a bullish cross that's happening. And whenever you have these things happening, usually, MAR just outperforms Bitcoin, usually goes up a lot higher, right? I think it might be ready to kind of make its leg move up. This morphology over here looks like a little bit of an extended version over here, to be honest. And if you just look at Ichimoku, it looks very, very similar morphology. This looks like an extended version of this one over here. Price also got down underneath the Tenkan Nikijin after the bullish cross. Price got underneath the Tenkan Nikijin after the bullish cross, but they climbed back above, and it has a pretty big run afterwards. I do wonder whether or not that's going to be his. If you look at the monthly trend oscillator for Mara, it looks a lot more bullish actually than CleanSpark. I think there's a possibility Mara might actually run before CleanSpark does. Like CleanSpark doesn't really quite have that bullish cross. If anything, it still look a little bit more bearish. But Mara actually looks like it's getting ready to run pretty soon. So I would say I'm having some mic feedback. I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix it. As long as you guys can hear me. I would say Mara is looking pretty decent. It looks like it might be getting ready to run relatively sooner than CleanSpark because of that, bullish cross over there. And doing a little bit more of a deeper dive here, looking at the weekly chart. Weekly looks great. It bounced off of the Ichimoku cloud. It reclaimed the Tenkan, the blue line over here, from resistance and support, and wave trend still looks pretty good. You're going to have some resistance up above around 24, right? I told you Mara is stuck in the range. But there are some pretty bullish development that are happening. And if you also just look at like the Bollinger Band, it looks like it's squeezing pretty hard too. It looks like a bigger move could be coming. And it looks like it's reclaimed the bull market support band. So it looks better than CleanSpark on the short term, although I think that CleanSpark also should do pretty decent moving forward. Oh boy. Let's see what we're looking at. Otherwise, going to pull up the GAN here. You can see what Mara is doing. Can Mara report lower earnings on upcoming quarterly reports due to lower Bitcoin prices? I'm not gonna say too much about like the fundamentals. All I can say is that I follow the trend. A lot of times, I've been like looking at these Bitcoin miners pretty closely during the last cycle too. I can say like whenever the bull trend happens, they almost really don't care too much about like the actual numbers. I think it's more speculation at that point. Like these are speculative assets, so I'm not gonna focus too much on that. Mara stack a bunch of Bitcoin, and if the speculation of Bitcoin is going to be higher, I'm not really that worried about it. It's trying to break above the 22 level. It's been trying to do that for about 8 weeks now. It's been having a hard time doing it, but it's got a very, very nice ascending triangle look to it. So these are generally a little bit more bullish, because you're basically trying to eat the supply around here, around 22, but the demand has been increasing over time. This is a pretty decent look. I think that eventually it's going to end up breaking above 22. And once it does that, it's going to probably end up going a lot higher. And if you'd ask me how much higher after 22, well, you got to break about this around $34, which is where it got rejected over here a few months ago, right? After that, maybe a 0.618 around 52 is going to be a pretty strong resistance zone. 0.5 could also be, but it depends. Over the last cycle, like what did it do? It just, whenever things got really bullish, it didn't care. It can consolidate here, went down, get super bearish, hit the angle over here on the last cycle for like 3, 4, 5 months, and then next thing you know, it just kept on breaking like angle after angle, kept on breaking arc after arc, and it just kept on breaking like different things. It just keeps on going up, right? So we are at resistance, and we've been consolidating here for a very long time, and the Bollinger Band is squeezing very hard. If it ends up going up, which I think it probably will based on what I'm seeing, it could be pretty powerful. It could be pretty powerful. There's no guarantee, and my money is in it, but I think the sentiment has more or less reset, because even though a lot of people were watching my video, I still don't think, like, we walk in the street, like, nobody knows what the heck you're talking about when it comes to, like, what are miners. I don't think anybody really knows what they're talking about. Um, like, what? Like, how do you mine Bitcoins? Anyway, uh, that's Mara in a nutshell. Looking at Bitfarms, I'm going to go back to the monthly here. I'm going to turn off the GAN and just basically show you the wave trend. Oscillators also turning positive. So that is potentially getting ready. You see what happened last time it turned positive, right? Last times when it turned positive, it was some pretty good things happen. And right now we just had another positive turn. So yeah, hey, maybe we're gonna make another leg up. I don't know. I'm just a cat. Ichimoku Cloud. This looks a little bit more bullish than Mara because it's reclaiming both the Tenkan and Kitchen. So yeah, it's looking pretty decent over here. I do think it's probably gonna end up hitting the cloud, and although it took a lot longer than I thought it would, but I do think it's probably end up hitting the cloud up here, or the premature cloud is forming around like 4.5, $5. I think that's probably going to be the natural progression, given that you do have some bullish momentum that's building up, and given that you reclaim a lot of very important support levels over here on the monthly. On the weekly, it bounced from the Ichimoku cloud. It's kind of stuck in the range here a little bit, but I think it's probably going to end up breaking up. And yeah, I do think you do have a little bit of short-term bearish cross here. So who knows? Maybe you end up having a little bit more consolidation up here before going up higher. Sometimes you have something like this. It's not always a bad thing. Like, look at what happened when you have a little bit of tiny bearish cross. Nothing happened. And it just ended up breaking into the cloud. So I'm not that worried about that. I'm more interested in the higher time frame because the monthly is looking great. And if you're asking me about, is it going to end up making a big move soon? I think the Bollinger Band looks like it wants to squeeze. And right now we're above the bull market support band. So, and also showed you on the monthly, also like we just had a bullish cross. So I think you can kind of put the two and two together and try to figure out what price might end up doing, right? Pulling up the GAN, pulling up the volume shelf or anchor volume profile here. We're basically breaking above these resistance over here. Got a pretty bearish toppy candle over here, and came back, got a pretty bullish support candle over here. And we've just been testing some of the further support down below, anywhere around like 2.3 to 2.5. It's a pretty strong support level that we're able to break above as resistance and now flipping into support, right? And you can also see a very strong volume shelf over here, which is going to be, support level. But things are kind of getting stuck between the range over here still, right? So it might take another few weeks to push up. But again, I think the monthly is looking pretty great. And once it breaks through, I mean, you can potentially re-challenge the 3.8 level over here, this Fibonacci level over here that got rejected last time. But I think it'll go up to like, around like a little less than $5. It can hit some of the $6-7 range up here. And if it ends up pulling one of these crazy moves where it just breaks arc to arc like it doesn't really care, then it could potentially hit some of the higher targets up here in the 20s. But we're still stuck in the range, and there's still a lot of resistance above. I'm not going to be too crazy bullish and call for 20s, although I did tell you what I think, that it's possible, right? You also have some pretty bullish development here on the monthly. You're also flipping the 0.236 Fibonacci level from resistance to support, right? And you're also flipping the Tenkan and Kijun of the Ichimoku cloud from resistance to support, and you also have a bullish cross. So a lot of things are pretty bullish about this chart, so I like it. And again, if you look at the Bitcoins over the Bitfarm over Bitcoin chart, it does look a little bit, bearishy kind of over here, looking at the candle pattern. But looking at the bullish cross over here, like it looks like it wants to go higher. So that's Bitfarms in a nutshell. CIFR, bullish cross, price above Tenkan and Kitchen. This thing never really truly had like a bearish cross here on the monthly, on the wave trend oscillator. It just keeps on going up. So I still think that the momentum is still going to be to the upside, and we're still fighting the resistance around 5.5, and we've been trying to break above that for like all year. I think it's going to get broken, and the weekly also looks great. It's just way above the cloud. It got rejected a little bit here at the Tenkan by the blue line over here, but it still looks pretty good. The weekly trend is still, bullish. So I'm not really seeing any bad things here. It's on top of the bull market support band. And I guess the Bollinger Band is also squeezing a little bit. The most important thing, though, is I just like the fact that it keeps on wanting to attack this orange level over here over and over and over and over and over and over again. And yeah, I think it's gonna break through. Like, this thing looks like a very strong ascending triangle. I don't know whether or not it wants to get to the end of the line over here, maybe another few weeks before breaking through. Once it breaks through, like $8, $10, 12, 15, 18, like none of these things are out of the question once it breaks through. Because they're just like, I don't know, for a reason, like they really want to defend the zone over here. And it's almost like this is the major battle here. It's going to be like what IREN did. Like, this is going to be what happens after it breaks through. It's going to be what WULF did. Like, that's what's going to happen after it breaks through. So I see that happening with CIFR. I just don't know when exactly, but it's looking pretty decent here for the CIFR chart. Even some of the higher targets are possible, like for the cycle, you're talking about maybe 12 to 18 months. If the bull market keeps on going, you can talk about like 40, 50, 60. I mean, like I think it's kind of ridiculous to think about right now, but I think it was also kind of ridiculous to think that price is just going to go for IREN over here for like $4 or $5 all the way to like $15. I mean, that was not thought to be possible by like a lot of people, although it's not really that surprising to me. And speaking of IREN, on the monthly chart, continues to look great. The question is always whether or not it's overextended now that we have a pretty significant bull run, right? Very nice bullish cross here. Very nice bounce above the Tenkan and Kijun. A little bit way above the Tenkan, though. So that's usually a little bit of a warning sign. We were a little bit overextended, which is why price has a hard time really breaking further above. On the weekly, yeah, you see a little bit of exhaustion there, don't you? The wave trend is pointing down a little bit. You have a little bit of a bearish cross over here, although I do think that price have found a really good support level over here around 10.2 at the rising Tenkan. And I do think that right now things were just overextended a few weeks ago. You have this candle over here that closed way outside the upper Bollinger Band on the weekly. That's not sustainable, right? So price went back down. I thought it was going to go down further. It didn't. It bounced, and right now it wants to gravitate towards the upper Bollinger Band. The Bollinger Band is expanding, so most likely it's going to keep going up higher, but it could go a little bit lower before going higher. We're talking about a lot of different support levels. You're talking about the bull market support band. I'm going to get rid of the Bollinger Band here. You're going to talk about the Ichimoku cloud supports. You just bounce off of close to one here around 10.2, another one around like 9.6, another one around 8.7, another one around like 7.6. You also have a very, very important horizontal zone over here around $8. And, I think you have a lot of support. Do I think that it has to go down all the way down to these levels? No, not necessarily. I do think that if you were to buy this around 10.2 something last week, it was probably pretty good risk reward ratio. So I think that the short report is just not the reason for stocks to drop. I think that the short report was probably a justification for them to want to tank when price were simply overextended and when price hit resistance at the top of the arc right there. That's what I think. And we're also a little bit, exhausted over here too, right, on the wave trend oscillator. So I think that they just needed to have a reason, and if anything, somebody might be wanting to close their short. And actually, a lot of times when you see a short report, they're very poorly written, they have no grounds at all. They actually just kind of want to close their short. So I don't know. I'm just speculating here, right? But I think those short reports, they're also speculating, so I don't really care. Yeah, so you also have a pretty strong support level over here too, around the 0.382, and you also have some pretty strong support levels here too. That's confluent with that with the Fibonacci level here around the 0.382, which is going to be the Super-Ichi cloud. Like that also served as really good support 2 weeks ago. Like it almost bounced right off of the Super-Ichi cloud right there, right? And then this past week we retested it, went down below, and we needed some additional support zone underneath to provide support, and we found support. When you're supposed to go up in high volume like that and you do a little bit of a back test on support, is this necessarily a bad thing? I don't think so. Like look at the volume. You have some pretty significant volume over here right at support, and it looks like it bounced. There's a lot of demand. This wick had a lot of volume over here. This whole uptrend had a lot of volume. So, this little downtrend over here was on declining volume, right? So I actually like the way that this chart looks a lot. But we are at resistance, and I do think that it is possible for it to cool down a little bit longer because we are maybe a little bit overextended. We simply are a little bit overextended. Currently, price is still above the upper Bollinger Band on the monthly chart. So another level down here, right, that we bounced off of was the monthly upper Bollinger Band, which is 10.6. So you do have a lot of confluence of support underneath. I do think that this thing is probably just getting started in terms of like the next 12 to 18 months, but it doesn't mean that you're not going to have some major volatility to go down further before going up higher, right? So you have to do your proper risk assessment. Even a few weeks ago, I was already kind of warning, I think things were getting pretty overextended over here. And, so I'm not surprised that like a short report came at all. Like to be completely honest with you, I don't know. That's all I'm going to say about it. And if you want to look at like some of the crazy high targets, if you think that Bitcoin is going to go up a lot higher and IREN is going to go up a lot higher with it, it's reasonable. I mean, you're right at resistance. I would like to be a little bit more cautious, right? It can end up going sideways like CleanSpark did for like months before going up higher while money rotates, right? It doesn't mean that irisenergy's fundamentals are not good. Matter of fact, like a lot of people are very, very bullish on the the fundamental story of IRIS, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that it won't go sideways before it keeps going up, right? And it can just stuck in the arc over here for quite some time, while you see other stocks like Mara might start to run potentially. Like it's just rotation, or like CIFR, you might see that start running. And IREN is just simply a little bit overextended, so it might end up overextended and going sideways for a little bit longer, and that's not the end of the world. Same thing, I think Terawulf is experiencing a very similar picture, and they kind of run together. I think they're both a little bit overextended, both in terms of the monthly chart. And you can see that right now price is still way outside the monthly upper Bollinger Band, right? That's not natural. It probably end up like to gravitate back towards the lower Bollinger Band, although these are Bitcoin miners. They don't have to do what I tell them to do. Maybe we're starting to experience like a very parabolic bull trend that just defies gravity for a while, and we end up getting punished for it a lot later. That's always a possibility, but we're a little bit far away from the upper Bollinger Band here on the monthly, which is why I think like for me, WULF is a hold and not a buy at these levels currently. I might change my mind if things go sideways and end up catching the upper Bollinger Band and even go underneath of that. I might actually be interested in buying some when everybody was like, oh, I need to get out of WULF and need to chase, Mara or CIFR whenever it ends up going a lot higher at that point. Just some thoughts. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not very good, so don't listen to me. Weekly chart. Oh man, look how overextended it is for like 6 weeks in a row. So and it also looked like the wave trend also starting to show a little bit of exhaustion. So I think this is a hold. I think it might have to go sideways to kind of cool off some of the indicators here before going up higher. I'm still bullish on WULF. I still hold it. I don't care if it drops down to 4 or 3, whatever. I don't really care. I bought like around the 2. Like I think my average is like 2, so I don't really care what it does. I think it's going to go up a lot higher though. So, but I wouldn't buy here. And if I end up missing the boat by not loading up more, I still have a bag. I'm okay. Right? And you guys are asking about you got boo-blalled trading initial breakout from 12. Yeah, these are some pretty volatile stocks. You guys asked about MSTR. So MSTR, Coinbase, and Hood. I did a live stream a couple days ago. I already talked about them. So if you want to check that out, please do. It's there. It's from a couple days ago. And I did it after like Friday market close, so nothing has changed. So please go check that out. Some people are asking for CORZ. I'm just going to say like there's not much to chart for CORZ except that it was very, very similar on the weekly chart to like Terawulf and to IREN, whereas things are just simply way too far overextended and it's just cooling off. So I actually can see like IREN and no problem. Yeah, you're welcome. I actually see like IREN and WULF and CORZ kind of run together because they have very, very similar Bollinger Band charts. I don't have enough price history because they went bankrupt and they just came back. I don't have enough price history to do too much like Fibonacci analysis, GAN, or anything crazy. But this is a bullish chart. Like I don't have to tell you that. Like everything is looking pretty bullish. It's just simply overextended, needed to cool off, and it can cool off for another few weeks while the other miners can go up. That's all I'm going to say. And I still think that Riot has been very, very painful for a lot of people. And it's extremely unfortunate for a lot of people to have this kind of loss of opportunity cost. Although, if you ask me whether or not Riot is going to run up, looking at the trend wave trend oscillator here, I see it maybe starting to want to do that. I can totally see price just kind of go sideways over here for a little longer and it can just keep going. I really don't see the possibility of just shooting up like next month. It can go up, don't get me wrong, like it can go up 10, 20, 30%, and it would still be a candle kind of like that, and it would still be around the bottom. It's still not going to be like bam, and just erase all these like, bearish candles over here. I do think it's a good thing that the last 6-7 months on the downtrend here is on a little bit declining volume. So that's a good sign, right? And wave trend also looked like it's maybe starting to want to turn flat, but not quite yet, So I don't know if I would enter Riot at this point. I would probably keep holding the other 6 miners that I just talked about at the beginning, and I'll probably just end up, not getting into Riot at this point. It might be a late cycle runner. It was actually early cycle last cycle, but it might be a late cycle runner. Weekly looks a little bit better. It keeps on having these like, bullish cross, bullish cross, bullish cross. Just never really had the momentum going here, but weekly looks a little bit better. The Bollinger Band is also squeezing, so there might be a pretty significant move that could be like 10, 20, 30% up. I can potentially see that, and that might end up getting a bull trend and end up getting people a little bit more excited about Riot. Although, like for the overall trend, it's just been oscillating up and down, up and down. So even if price gets up to like anywhere from like 18 to 20, it's still going to be some pretty strong resistance up above. But that's nothing to sneeze at. You're talking about going up from like here, going up to 20, 30% to the Bollinger Band here, or maybe even expand the Bollinger Band up here to around 18 to 19, 20 range before it goes down again, find some kind of, bounce up, from there. There's still nothing to sneeze at in terms of the gains. I just am not convinced about like the long-term trend. Like it's just simply underneath a lot of resistance right now. It needs to reclaim the weekly Tenkan. And it's just been resistance, So looking at bull support band is underneath of that. So there's also resistance. It's underneath a lot of resistance, and it needs to prove itself. So from a risk reward ratio, I probably won't enter Riot. I think Mara to 40 is possible. I do over the next few months, and Bitcoin does really well. If it enters back into price exploration, Mara to $40, sure, it's possible. I'm not going to say it's not. I think somebody asked me about digihost on one of the posts that they asked. So I'm just going to go through this real quick. I mean, this looks just like one of the other run-of-the-mill miners. It's not as bullish as like CleanSpark. It's not as bullish as like CIFR, but I do think that it's probably somewhere close to like Mara and Riot. It's just kind of gone sideways for about a year and a half, almost 2 years now. But it looks like it might be wanting to run here on the monthly on the macro scale whenever Bitcoin gets going. So that's pretty much all I have to say. I don't really want to enter this because I feel like the chart looks very similar to a lot of the other miners that I already have. So nothing really stands out to me. It's not a bad looking chart. It just doesn't really stand out to me, right? I do think that it's still trying to fight some monthly resistance on the Tenkan and Kijun. And then on the weekly, you still try to fight some resistance here on the Tenkan, right? So nothing is really screaming like, oh, hey, you should enter right now. I just don't really feel that strongly about it. HUD 8. Forgot about HUD 8. We all forget about HUD 8. HUD 8 actually is still a little bit of a mixed bag, leaning bullish because you have a nice bullish crossover here on the wave trend. Things got back about the Tenkan and Kijun, although you don't have a bullish cross quite just yet. And you're hitting a pretty strong resistance zone over here. I would consider like anywhere around 17 to 18 bucks. Some very strong resistance that's like multi-year long, right? So you're hitting resistance, be too entirely bullish about it. You're also hitting the top of the monthly bull in Japan, so that's also resistance. So I can't really be entirely too bullish about it when things are getting to resistance. If you're looking at the weekly, it does look like the trend is starting to kind of exhaust here a little bit, And if you look at the bull in Japan, it does look like it's a little bit too far about the upper bull in Japan for far too long. And I think we're going to end up getting punished for it. So do I think it's going to end up just breaking above? Nah, probably end up cooling down. But the good thing about HUD 8 is you're starting to have a lot of really decent support underneath, like the Ichimoku Cloud, around 14.5. You have the Tenkan and Kijun down here are going to be providing some pretty decent support around like the 12 to 13 zone. So you have a lot of support down below. It's not like how it was once it fell through, but the cloud, it just dropped like crazy, right? Now you're back above, and now you're having some pretty decent support that could backtest potentially before further bullish continuation, form a little bit of a higher low before going up higher. So that's what I'm seeing with HUTs. Man, that is a lot of miner talk. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other chart requests that you guys have. I have no idea what UTSL is, and I don't care because I can chart it. On the monthly is stuck in a range. Top range 30, bottom range 24, 23. Until further notice, it's a bullish thing that it reclaimed the blue line from resistance here to support, right? But it's still stuck in the range. I like the fact that it's for the most part making higher lows and higher highs. I like the fact that the wave trend is pointing up, so there's potentially some more room to go. It doesn't really look like it's quite exhausted yet. Now, if price went sideways for a little longer, it might end up looking exhausted, and it could very well do that. But on the weekly, it looks great. On the weekly, it looks like it just broke through the cloud on increasing volume, and then it's just doing like a little bit of declining volume backtest. It looked like it bounced. So if you ask me whether or not it's going to end up going up or down again and test the cloud because it's above the cloud because I already tested the cloud, I'm going to lean toward it being bullish, and also reclaim the weekly Tenkan over here. I'm going to lean towards it being bullish. Reclaim the bull market support band beautifully, right? Like, look at that. That's Beautiful. Looking at Bollinger Band, there's still room to go up. I mean, I would say that they could potentially hit the top of this range over here back in around like 30, 31, 32. I can see it doing that, you know. So there's not much really like too bearish about this chart, and you also have a little bit of a bullish cross that might be coming soon on the wave trend, right? So things are looking pretty decent there, although I still have no idea. Oh, it's utilities, bull. You're playing utilities, okay? Yeah, that's an interesting play. Yeah, look, it looks great. I don't know what else to say. A couple other chart requests that you guys have. Is GME $26 a key level? I would think so. I would think so. I showed you guys the Super Ichi Cloud, how it looks like it's kind of holding, finding support down underneath. Let me see what, I don't think the Ichimoku is showing me too much here. I'm going to look at different time frames and see what I'm seeing. Haven't looked at it for days, so let me see. Yeah, part of the reason why 26 is going to be hard to break is, I think or even like around 27, we have the upper Bollinger Band here on the weekly. And it actually looks like you're about to potentially have a bearish cross over here too. But I actually think that there's a lot of big moves that are coming, and the daily chart looks great. It looks like it probably wants to push up higher. And the Bollinger Band is squeezing even harder and harder and harder. I think it's probably going to keep going up. 26 is a relatively important level, mostly because it's just been hitting like one time after another. So you have a lot of rejection at 26. I don't know why that is. I'm not really seeing any like particular level. Let me look at the 2-week chart here for GME. I'm just seeing it on different time frames, right? On the weekly, on the Ichimoku, is above the Ichimoku cloud. That's bullish. On 2-week, it's underneath of that. So higher time frame is still has a lot of work to do because it's just getting rejected off the 2-week cloud, right? But on the weekly, it is above the Ichimoku cloud, is above the Super Ichi cloud. So I think we're just kind of stuck in the range here, and you can see that that's the case because things are just basically consolidating sideways with the Bollinger Band squeezing like this. Oh boy, a big move's going to come. Again, like down first or up, or just keep going up, I don't know. I think it's going to be up because of the overall higher time frame trend, and because it reclaimed the 20-day, and because the daily looks great, looks very bullish. So it's probably going to go up. But is 26 an important level based on horizontal? So I'm just eyeballing it. Yes. Why is that? I don't know exactly, but there are some higher time frame resistance around like 26, 27, if that helps answer your question. Will Crowdstrike Moon? Made a video a few weeks ago, I think, on Crowdstrike. Crowdstrike is one of those stocks that will probably end up flying higher whenever it is ready to do. But I did warn, I think, let me see. I think I warned like maybe somewhere around like May or June. I think Crowdstrike is probably a little bit overextended. Not so much from the monthly Bollinger Band perspective, but from the Ichimoku cloud perspective. You had a bullish cross, great. This is a bull trend, great. It's going to go up a lot higher, great. You have a big giant green candle over here on huge volume, great. What is not so great right now, price is way above the blue line over here. I don't like it when things are too far above the blue line. I do not like it. Usually when you have things that are a little bit too far away from the blue line, what happened over here? When things are a little bit too far above the blue line, you go sideways. You either correct through time or you correct through price. Over here, it corrected through price. Over here, looky here, what happened? Well, way too far away from the blue. Eventually, you have to correct through time before the blue comes out and catches up, right? Yeah, that's a little bit hard for me to want to, get into Crowdstrike right now. Maybe if it goes sideways and go down, that might be a pretty, decent buying opportunity. Don't get me wrong. It could keep going up higher. it doesn't have to listen to me. It could just keep going up higher. But and also if you also look at the wave trend too, it is pointing bullish too. So don't get me wrong, right? It could keep going up higher. I just do not like that is too far away from the blue line. And that's just me. I think it's probably going to go up a lot higher over time. So probably is a mood point. And I even did a can here. I want to show you. I'm going to turn off the volume. I'm going to turn off the Ichimoku here. I even did a can here. I think it's going to hit some of the targets up here. Like it might go sideways or down before going up again. But I think really by like the end of the year or early next year, it's probably going to hit like 400, maybe like 460 to 470. I think it's entirely possible based on what I'm seeing that it's doing. And also you have a weekly gap here. I don't think all gaps have to close. I don't want you to get that impression from me. But again, things are a little bit overextended, so anything's fair game, right? And you also have a little bit of a bearish crossing on the weekly. So I would say my probabilistically speaking, sideways for a few weeks or down, then up, over the next 2 or 3 months or so is my best guess, or maybe a little longer. That's my best guess for Crowdstrike. But I like Crowdstrike. I just think that the technicals need to catch up, and it's just not quite there yet because of what I'm seeing. Woo! Somebody also asked me earlier in the day when I was doing a live stream, not to go pretty soon. They asked me about Celcius. I haven't looked at this. I'm going to pull that up here real quick. Obviously, I looked at it before, so I have all these random labels on here. But yeah, it looks like it's just been forming higher highs and higher lows. You had a double top over here. I think you hit the target of this double top breakdown already. And you basically had a breakout, and then you have a back test of the breakout of the zone over here. So you also, looking at the weekly, also have maybe a little bit of a potential turnaround here on the wave trend oscillator. So Celcius doesn't look bad. I'm not really that interested in owning Celcius. Like personally, it's just not my kind of stock, but it doesn't look bad. It also looked like it's just basically bounced and back tested the top of the cloud. It looks like it held, right? So these are generally pretty bullish looks to it. Eventually when you go up high, you have to come back and do a higher low. And this is just a higher low for a bull trend. Like I don't think it's that big of a deal. If you are looking at the monthly time frame, it did break down into underneath the tank and into the kitchen, the red line here, and the kitchen looks like it's holding. Sometimes that's what bull market does. You might end up having some back test of the blue line, or sometimes gets underneath and test the red line. As long as it's holding, is still considered to be bullish. If the month of July closed like this or higher, then I think this is a very nice tweezer bottom that could mark a pretty decent bottom for it to bounce from. And it would probably take a little bit longer. It might bounce from there, if it goes here or above with this tweezer, it might go up a little bit slightly. It might turn this wave trend a little bit more flatter. But you probably would need a little bit more time. I don't think it's just going to bounce like that. That's not how stocks work, right? Downtrend sideways here for a couple months before going up. Downtrend sideways here for a couple months before going up. Downtrend probably sideways here for a couple months before going up. That's what I'm thinking for Celcius. Let me look at the weekly chart, right? Again, weekly looks a little bit better. I want to go back to the Bollinger Band here. And you can see it's really trying to find support at the lower Bollinger Band here too. Is really trying to help decelerate this downtrend. And yeah, it looks like you have some pretty decent buying volume over this week too. So things are looking more bullish for Celcius. I like it, although I'm not gonna get into it because it's not my kind of stock. SQ block. So I've charted this, like, I think when I saw price was going to like 40 or 39 or something like that, I really thought that was the bottom based on a couple of things. I have some posts on it, and I thought that was going to bounce from here. I'm going to turn off the Bollinger Band here. Yeah, I basically thought that this looks like a descending broadening wedge. I that's what it looked like to me, right? So whenever price hit this trend line over here, I thought that was probably the bottom because this is actually bullish formation. It ping pongs, but eventually breaks above and it goes higher. But yeah, right now things you have basically all these exhaustion over here. You're gonna need some cooling off over here, which is exactly what it's doing. It did form a little bit of a lower low, which is not great. And you are potentially hitting some resistance up above around like $72, which is not great. But look at the oscillation, right? Like I think the entire downtrend down here for the last 12 weeks or so are happening to really trying to cool down some of the indicator over here before pushing price up a lot higher. And I have reason to believe that I think SQ is going to do pretty decent moving forward. Let me see. What other things can I show? Let me get rid of this all this stuff here. I'm curious to look at the MCDX Plus for this. You have some whales to come in this past week. We really haven't seen much whales, but you do have a change in trend anyway. Like start a few weeks ago, you have some increase in whalish momentum and decrease in retail momentum, which goes along with this, bullish cross over here on the wave trend oscillator. It is looking better. It is looking better. I think it probably will end up breaking above 72, but you might get rejected that initially before going up further. Going to look at the monthly here. Now, on the monthly, I also can see that the wave trend is starting to flatten out here a little bit. On the monthly, I like to look at the Ichimoku, and on the Ichimoku is telling me something that is pretty decent, which is that it's still holding the Tenkan. Whenever it holds the Tenkan, I give it the benefit of a doubt. And whenever we're getting close to a Tenkan and Kitchen cross, which means the blue might cross above the red, possibly next month, I'm going to give it a benefit of a doubt, right? Wave trend's turning more flat. I like this look. I do. And also think that because RK Fund is doing better in terms of its technicals, that SQ is probably going to follow. And because IWM is doing pretty well, I think SQ is probably going to follow. If you ask me about targets, the target is going to be, you're going to have to basically get back to, let me see here. Yeah, on the weekly, you also see that it's bouncing for the Ichimoku cloud too. Like all these things are bullish, right? You asking me about targets, I'll say maybe 72 would be some resistance. I like $85. That's going to be a strong resistance zone. That could be a really good price target. I can see a lot of people end up taking profit over here. But you've been tagging this trend line for how many times now? 1, 2, 3, maybe if you count these 4 and 5, right? Around the zone over here. You've tagged this line over here like almost 3 to 5 times. It's getting weak. Like all these supply over here is getting weaker. I think that people are going to end up taking profit over here, go back down a little bit further, and then go up again. It might end up going a lot higher because of that. So I think like 85 would be a potentially good zone to consider. You're gonna basically just look. I don't even have to use my brain. You can just use the anchored volume profile, and you can look. Yeah, the next zone is going to be around like 100, and then after that, it's going to be like 130. You can see that here too. A lot of price history has happened around 100, around 130. So yeah, 85, 100, 130. That's it. It's a bullish chart. I favor it going up higher. So that's SQ. AMD. Yeah, I'm getting closer to an hour. Right? Let me take a sip of water here. Yeah, if you look at AMD just right off the bat, I like to zoom out a little bit more. It's a bullish chart, guys. Why do I say it's a bullish chart? When overextended, you can tell that it's overextended because it closed above the monthly Bollinger Band. above the monthly Bollinger Band for 4 months in a row. You're getting exhausted. You're getting exhausted, you're gonna come back and try to back test some things, right? Try to find some support from a higher low before going up higher. Yeah, I talked about WULF already. Backtrack. I promise you, I talked about WULF. And yeah, so basically, it just got way too far overextended, and it's just come back down and back test. Try to find some support level before going up higher. Found support right on the money here on the red line there on the Kijun, and push up, and is trying to find support at a higher level up here on the blue line, which is the Tenkan, and looks like it's finding support there too. As a result, the wave trend oscillator looks like it's flattening. Looks like it wants to maybe do a little bit of a bullish crossover here for the next month or two. It's a bullish chart. I don't have much else to say about it. If you want to talk about targets, that's a different story. I'm generally not very good at targets. For targets, I generally like to look at Fibonacci levels because that's has a lot to do with the selling prices for based on human psychology. Although I'm not really seeing that the Fibonacci really hit that perfectly over here. This is a log. Let me try to pull up the let me try to pull up the I guess the log looks better. It got rejected here at 0.786 and went back above, and right now it's just trying to backtest the previous all-time high. You look at the log, like what is the possible target for this cycle? Maybe 322, like somewhere up there, right? If you look at the linear, I can see that potentially like the 2.618 could potentially be a level for the cycle. 340, that's possible. We got pretty close to the 1.618. I mean, we got rejected there. This looks like a bullish chart. Probably going to push above 1.618, and it's probably going to end up gravitating to like the 2.618 is probably my best guess. So yeah, still a lot of meat on the bone for the cycle would be probably what I think. And right now, if you buy, I think you might be buying right at support. Doesn't mean support's not going to break down, but in terms of risk reward ratio, it doesn't look bad. I don't think it's going to come back all the way down to the cloud. I could be wrong, but it looks like a pretty decent chart to me. It's still trying to figure out some technicals before it breaks out. Although the wave trend looks great, it's still got a little bit of resistance. We got rejected this week on this weekly chart here on the Kijun on the red line, and we're still kind of stuck here. So if it's able to reclaim that, form a little bit of a bullish cross, then you're talking about a lot higher. But it's still a bullish chart because basically what it's been doing is just made a higher low and wants to, looks like it wants to gravitate up back to like the 200s. That's what it looks like to me. So that is AMD. Like with that said, I'm a little bit conflicted because I do think that the overall S&P 500 do look a little bit overextended. So a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, it looks overextended." Even like I talked to the charting guy yesterday, and even he thought that it was overextended, and we might be hitting some pretty strong resistance, or you might end up having some rotation from large cap to small cap. So I don't know. It still looks like a bullish chart, but it might need some time to kind of cool down, correction, maybe even hit the Ichimoku cloud here around like 160. It might just correct through time. So we'll see. I mean, but this is, if I just look at AMD alone, isolated, looks like a bullish chart to me. GCT, I have no idea what that is. GigaCloud Technology. GigaCloud Technology looks bullish. It's on the monthly, it's just basically bull flagging on top of the Tenkan. Looks bullish. And looks like it needed to do that probably because it was way outside the upper Bollinger Band here on the monthly. On the weekly, it looks like it's just been oscillating, and it might be getting done maybe like no more than maybe the next few weeks or so. I think it's going to end up breaking up or down. Looking at the wave trend, looks like it wants to break up, you do have a little bit of a bearish engulfing, but I don't know. It's just consolidating. I don't have anything else to say. But this looks like a big giant bull flag over here, and looks like we just need to cool down from here all the way down to here. So I don't have much to say about it. I think it's bullish. Would I buy here at this like big giant bull flag? Probably not. I don't know what it is. But if you're holding, I can totally see you wanting to maybe just keep holding a little longer and just set up some stop loss and things like that to try to, you know, do your risk management, because these big giant bull flags, they don't always go up, but the probability is probably going to be up because the primary trend is up and because it's holding the monthly Tenkan. And I think a bigger move is coming because the daily Bollinger Band looks really, really squeezy. So yeah, kind of squeezy, kind of like it was over here, where it's kind of squeezy. So bigger move's going to come. Which way, I don't know. Best of luck. That's my short version for that. I hope that actually, you know what? I'm just gonna do a little bit more of due diligence here. I'm a little bit worried because it looks like it's losing the bull market support bands, losing the 20-week a little bit. But again, like I think it's just consolidating. I'm gonna back up. I'm just gonna say this on the higher time frame trend, it looks bullish. On the lower time frame trend, it looks equivocal, but maybe leaning bullish. I'm just gonna leave it as that. So because I don't know what it is, and because there are other opportunities that I like better, I probably won't enter it. But this is a good hold. Like, this is a good hold. If you're already in it, I think this is a good hold. The risk reward is pretty decent. So PayPal. Dan, welcome. What have didn't have any? I'm afraid of reading miners. Yeah, I already answered miners, Dan. I don't know what I don't know what you're asking, Dan. Man, okay. Yeah, I talked about like 8 or 9 miners earlier. So I'm probably just I'm minored out, man. If you want to rewind back and hear what I had to say about miners, feel free to do that. Pain Pal. Do I think we bottomed? Yes, I think we bottomed. I don't think that's the question anymore, because it bounced from one end of the lower Bollinger Band to the other end of the lower Bollinger Band, just like the dot-com bubble for NASDAQ. I mean, I've shown that before. I'm not going to show it again, but you know what? I'll go ahead and do it. I guess it's because it's fun. It looks just like the dot-com bubble where it like hit the lower Bollinger Band. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, that's the bottom." Nope. It decided to hit the lower Bollinger Band again on the other side, and that's when it bottomed. And I think that's what happened to PayPal, is that it's doing the exact same thing. So do I think PayPal is bottom? Yes, I think PayPal is bottom. Why are we not moving up higher? Because the 20-month moving average is still pointing down as resistance. That's basically it. We had a bearish cross here. We had a nice bull trend up here for like 6 months. You have a little bit of bearish cross over here, but I do think that things are probably going to end up turning around, because it does look like we're doing a very, very nice basing behavior here. And if you look at the Ichimoku, yeah, looking at Ichimoku, you can see also why price is not bouncing up higher, because initially it went back up and like, yay, and it's just back testing in the Tenkan. It broke underneath the Tenkan again, and now it's a little bit of resistance. It's probably going to break back above. The reason why I say that is because it's really turning flat, and I don't think the Tenkan is going to be very strong resistance anymore. I think it's probably going to end up pushing up higher, but it could take time. Looking at the lower time frame on the weekly, initially when it entered the cloud, I was like, yay, it's probably going to bounce around the cloud and go up, but it fell underneath underneath the cloud. So now the cloud is resistance again. You do have a little bit of a trend change over here on the weekly time frame, right? So I think it's going to end up challenging the cloud here again. It may be break back inside a little bit, and it could challenge the thin cloud over here too, right? But I do think that this massive downtrend, this massive big cloud over here is over, and we're starting to see the end of the tunnel over here on the other side. We're starting to see it potentially doing better moving forward. I am not that crazily bullish on PayPal. I do think that by the end of the year, we're probably going to be in the 70s. That's my best guess. you have a lot of resistance levels here. You have a resistance level here around like $68. You have another resistance level here around like 75, 76. I do think by the end of the year, we're probably going to end up back testing the 76 over here. But it's still, going to take time. I do think that in 2025, because how the weekly cloud is, the bearish weekly cloud is basically over, I do think that there's a lot more room for PayPal to run in 2025. I got out of it and I chased other things because I just didn't really see PayPal as like that favorable. It's a great valuation play for sure. And it's going to catch up because of fundamentals in the balance sheet, everything else. It's undervalued, but the momentum's not there yet. And I think probably going to be happening is probably going to be around like 2025. So I might look into like, if everything else just kind of runs up, I might look into entering PayPal as like a valuation play later on in the year. But I'm not entering that right now. Yeah, I know. Like PayPal is actually it just doesn't have any momentum. It's you can buy into it. You can sleep well at night. It's not going to drop. You might not sleep well at night though if you check like SMCI for example, and if it ends up just keeps on going up. Didn't they just get included? What index did they end up getting included from on Friday? If anybody can tell me. Anyway, I'm too lazy to look up right now. It looks like it's a big giant bull flag, kind of like how it was over here. It looks like the trend also, it looks like it wants to, yeah, Nasdaq. Okay, yeah, so it's probably gonna go up. it's probably gonna go up. It's a bull trend, it's a bull flag, it's probably gonna go up. And yeah, looking at the Ichimoku, again, I tell you, like I get worried when things are a little bit too far overextended from the blue line, right? That's when I get a little bit more worried. But it's not too overextended from the blue line. So even though price went from like $30 all the way to like 1,000 in a period of like 2.5 years, I actually don't see it being that overextended, which is like a pretty insane statement that I'm making. It looks like it is making a very similar technical move like it did over here before it had like this big bounce up. That's what it looks like to me. And it looks like the oscillator is just kind of oscillating. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I think that with the inclusion to the Nasdaq, it's going to look pretty decent moving forward. Yeah, I can't imagine into this play like earlier. Like this looks great. I I don't have anything else to say about it. I don't even have targets. Like if you want targets for this, ask the Great Maspy. If you want targets for SMCI, pester the Great Maspy. Ask him. He's going to tell you. He's going to draw these beautiful GAN. He's going to tell you that everything is predetermined. He's going to basically tell you that, oh, this is like obviously the price target. If it doesn't hit, like there's no price exploration that predict everything. So ask him. I think TNA is going to print too. I'm going to start doing a lot more like Jackie Chan posts for SOFI. A pretty small but decent position. If it ends up breaking, it's not going to end up breaking me because everything else has kind of gone up a lot. So SoFi and Affirm are like the two sore spots on my portfolio, if you will. But if you ask me, is Affirm like getting ready to run? I would say that yeah, I keep on showing the same thing. I'm going to put up the volume here. Like, what is going on with this volume on this whole downtrend? Like the volume is not there. This whole thing is non-committal. Now we're getting some pretty key support here, huh? Where you have some volume in stock trading hands right around, I'd say right around like 28 to maybe like 32, 33. You're starting to get like more volume kind of trading over here. Like this is a basing behavior. This whole move before that, this big giant up move over here was on increasing crazy volume. This whole downtrend over here has already set off a lot of the cool down of these indicators, and all of this is on like low volume. So I think it's going to get ready up to make a pretty powerful move up. Like to be completely honest with you, I it just hasn't happened yet, but I think it's going to end up making a pretty decent move above sooner rather than later. Looks like it wants to decelerate right around this volume shelf over here. And the resistance zone about that maybe like 36, 38, you know, about like maybe 40, 45, 50 is going to be a resistance zone up here, which is where it got rejected, right around the same zone over here, right? But I like Affirm. It's just been on a downtrend on low volume. So the lower it goes on declining volume, the better risk reward I think this whole thing is. And yeah, I don't have a whole heck of a lot to say about it. Same thing with SOFI. The only thing I really want to show you on SOFI is I think that, yeah, the trend seems to be curling up now. The monthly is not quite up yet, but it looks like it wants to curl up a little bit here. And if we end up closing the month the way it is, you have a very nice tweezer bottom over here. The only problem is I think $8 is going to be resistance because it's the Ichimoku cloud up here on $8. So I think that eventually things are still going to end up pushing up higher. But I think that $8 is going to be a resistance zone, which again, if you're a long-term bull for SoFi, is actually not a bad thing. You know, you want to buy as much as you can underneath here if you think that the stock is going to like 14 and higher. It just requires a lot of patience. Like there's no momentum here at all. It might start to pick up a little bit more momentum recently, but there really hasn't been much momentum, right? You have a little bit of whalish momentum here for this week, but it's yeah, patience is like I don't think it's just going to end up shooting up like that. But if this stock goes up, sometimes it can do that. It does have a personality. Whenever it goes down dragging on for a long time, for like months, and then next thing you know, it just takes like a few weekly candle for it to just do some like absolutely incredible things and get people bullish about SoFi again. That just hasn't happened yet. So anyway, $8 is going to be resistance, but I'm a little bit more unconventional, if you will. Like my buys for SoFi is not necessarily just simply based on TA, but it's more based on, I still think this is maybe like the bottom of the range over here. And I still think overall, like SoFi, their fundamental wise, like their earnings actually looking better and better. And there's actually a fundamental thesis to it, you know. But anyway, that's a different story for a different time. Whew! You guys just keep asking. I'm gonna open another can of carbonated water here. So I'll tell you what. I'll keep going until 5 o'clock, and I'm gonna drop. I'm gonna talk about. What am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about Enphase, and I already talked about Archie. Actually, yeah, I agree. Like Vivian, I talked about it earlier. It's starting to look pretty decent. It's not just me. Like other people who are looking at Archie, like Tommy. If you guys follow him on X, he's been doing some pretty incredible chart on that. The great Matt Spee also is very bullish on Archie as well. So yeah, check that out. But anyway, moving on to Enphase. Enphase. You know what gets me worried about Enphase? The resistance of the Ichimoku cloud. That's what gets me a little bit more concerned about Enphase. It's looking better. It looks like it has a hard time breaking the 130, 140s, 130 zone over here. And right now, you are hitting Ichimoku cloud resistance pretty soon around the low 120s. Is it going to break through into the Ichimoku cloud? Sometimes it can even take weeks and weeks and weeks for it to try to do that. Is this going to be the time where it just breaks above? Actually, it might. You might end up getting a couple of green candles coming for upcoming weeks. The reason why is this whole green candle over here looks like it's just engulfed like two bearish candle and almost like the majority of this bearish candle over here. And you're also looking like you have a little bit of a change in trend. There's a little bit of Welsh momentum, although it's not very high. So I can see it breaking into the cloud. What it's going to do after that, I don't know. I mean, like, looks like 130 something is going to be a pretty strong resistance zone up there. So um, looking at the monthly too, like you can see, if you ask me why I use the Ichimoku cloud, just look at it. It got rejected last month, and it got rejected over here by the Tenkan, and it flipped the Tenkan from resistance to support, but it got rejected from the cloud, so it fell underneath the Tenkan. Right now, reclaiming it. It looks okay. It really looks okay to me overall, but it might take time because you're at resistance. Even you break about 133, like the low 130 zone, you're still going to end up having resistance in 150 zone, right? Which is also, this horizontal zone over here that price has spent a long time using as support, right? That's going to be resistance over here, right? Still not a bad trade. Like, if you want to get into trading mentality Enphase is, if you want to talk about like the longer term, I still think that it looks pretty decent, but I don't think that it's gonna like break above like that and just keep mooning. I think that the cloud is pretty thick over here. So yeah, if you want to buy into it, it might give you some pretty nice pop and then nice drop. So it might oscillate around the cloud here for a little bit before going up higher. So as long as you're okay with the volatility, I think it might not be a bad stock to be in. I don't think it's going to go that down. Like, initially, I was more worried about Enphase. I was not bullish on it a few months ago. I'm still a little bit wary, and the reason why I'm a little bit wary about this stock is if you look at the monthly chart, the 20-month moving average is still pointing down. So that's what I'm saying. Like, maybe the next month or two or three, the 130s to 150 zone is going to be resistance. It might end up getting rejected, go back down to the 1-teens or something like that. And it needs to flip this 20-month moving average from resistance to support. This is basically what Enphase has been doing. And yeah, you can see a little bit of a bearish cross there happening right now too. This is basically the entirety of what Enphase has been doing. I circled this over here when I was looking at the chart a few months ago. And that's also part of the reason why I'm not entering the stock, because I worried that it was going to do the same thing, where it looks like it bounced from the lower part of the monthly Bollinger Band and it just keeps on riding downwards, and the 20-month moving average is still going down, right? So I was more worried about that. But there's a difference between this spot over here and this spot over here. The big difference between this and this is that the Bollinger Band is squeezing. When I see Bollinger Band squeezing, that might actually signal a little bit of a change in trend. So over here, we might be a little bit closer to the end of the downtrend. Like, we might actually maybe like over here, right? You have to accept that there's a possibility that it could go down further. You have to accept there's a possibility of it going down further, because you still haven't really quite made that higher high quite just yet, and you're running into resistance. So you have to accept the possibility that it could go down, lower. And it might not, you might get rejected by a downtrending 20-month moving average, which I think a lot of people may not be paying attention to as much. But the Bollinger Band is squeezing, so I think the downside is going to be not that much. But I'm not buying, into Enphase. If you talk about long term, it's probably a great spot to buy. But like, I just don't know if I want to enter, because there's still some downside risk right there. I'm telling you, that's what I'm seeing. I think the great Matsby might see something a little bit different. Enphase is his stock. I would defer to him to give you some additional, long-term targets, whether or not he sees some stronger support zone underneath that I'm not seeing. I think that he might provide better perspective, because this is like his baby. So his independent baby that he made with somebody else. I don't have a baby with him. I don't care to, because I'm not that gay. So anyway, that was I talked about Coin. I had a live stream on Coin 2 days ago after the market closed on Friday. So my thoughts on that haven't changed quite yet. Yeah, will alternative energy do well in the Trump presidency? It's a very, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know whether or not Enphase is really turning around a corner yet. But, you have to think that if Tesla does well, do you think Enphase is going to follow? I don't know. But I do want to go through. Where else do I want to go through? I want to talk about IWM, and I'm probably going to end with IWM. I talked about Tesla on my live stream a couple days ago as well, and that was also after Friday close. So please check that out. And every single Tuesday, we're planning on doing this. Subscribe to Mao and Men. I keep talking about the great Masby. I do a live stream with him as well as the Tesla tracker. We look at Tesla almost every week. Subscribe and follow. Like we don't always just put a link, and sometimes we just go on when we go on. Usually we plan on doing maybe like 7:30 Eastern time now on Tuesday night. So if you want to follow Tesla, please, check that out. Going back to yeah, going back to no problem, margin call, no problem at all. Going back to IWM, I do want to show something here. I'm going to take off the Bollinger Band and take that off. Take off the volume. I'm gonna do something very special for you. I'm gonna make you something very, very special. I'm gonna pull up two charts here. I'm gonna pull up the IWM. I'm gonna push that against the S&P 500, and I'm gonna try to line them up. If I'm savvy enough to do that, close enough. It's actually not that close, but close enough, right? Let me see if I can do something a little bit. Yeah, okay, better. So let's do this. I'm going to put up the Super Ichi Cloud. I'm going to do a 2-week chart. That's going to ruin things, isn't it? Sorry, guys. Okay, close enough. I'm just going to do this. You guys know what I'm talking about. Actually, I want to show you a few cycles previously. So I'm going to actually zoom out here a little bit. Now, these two charts are lined up, right? The top right here is IWM, which is the Russell Small Caps. The bottom chart over here is the S&P 500 SPY. You really only had a few cycles, and if you zoom in, for each one of these cycles, you really have a bullish cross, which is indicated by the blue dot over here, right? So if you have a bullish cross over here, generally what happens, S&P 500 does this thing, where it just keeps on making higher high compared to before. And then next thing you know, you have a pretty major correction. And it can go sideways, and you might even make a little bit of higher high right around here, right? And you could just back test the kitchen line, like the red line over here, right? What happens generally in these previous cycles is that IWM doesn't quite make that higher high. It doesn't quite make that higher high. But whenever you have a rotation that happen, probably usually like about like anywhere from a few months to like within a year, basically. Within a year of this bullish cross over here on the 2-week Super Ichi Cloud, you start to have this rotation that happen, right? And when you have that rotation that happen, IWM tends to run, pretty significantly. Like over here, it just ran from like 82 all the way to like, like 123, right? Whereas SPY is also not bad. Like it ran up to like 150 all the way to like, 200. That's also nothing to sneeze at, But like IWM actually outperformed during this period after you had that rotation, right? And that's within a year of this bullish cross. The next cycle, same thing, right? You had a bullish cross over here in both the IWM as well as the S&P 500. Once you have that bullish cross, IWM makes a higher high compared to the previous, right? And you end up having a pretty significant downtrend. Like, IWM, sorry, SP 500 makes a higher high, right? And you have a pretty bad correction after that. IWM doesn't really make that higher high. it doesn't really end up breaking above quite just yet. And then it ends up making a pretty strong correction down. Right. And the next thing you know, you have like this big giant green candle, it just like shot up like that, So, and then S&P 500 also keeps going up, but it's just not as strong of a pace as IWM was after that, after like a few months after the bullish cross, right? IWM just went very berserker, like it went ballistic, just went up, made a higher high, and S&P 500 just kept going up higher, but IWM, like, it actually ended up going pretty decent too, So I think the COVID cycle is a little bit messed up because the COVID shutdowns are a true black swan event. I think what would have happened was probably going to be like over here, if we didn't have COVID, it would have made a higher high and just kept going higher. Because that's what SPY was doing. It was already making higher highs compared to over here. And it was looking like it was going through a little bit of rotation over here. And they pushed price up higher with IWM going up higher, right? It ended up getting truncated because of COVID, but eventually caught up. And you had a bullish cross over here. Over here, S&P 500 made a higher high, right? IWM, not quite yet. A rotation happened, right? And then IWM just went beast mode a few months after this bullish cross. What's happening right now? Let's talk about it. The S&P 500 made a bullish cross way before the IWM did. This is a little bit unusual. And it went berserker a lot faster than IWM did. IWM didn't really make a bullish cross until maybe like February. And S&P 500 have already gone through, a higher high right around here, right around like January 2024. It's been going up over the last few months. IWM has been consolidating. Overall, it's been, establishing a bull trend up, right? But I do think that it is time for this rotation over here over the last 6 months. I think a lot of funds that actually like secretly shift to IWM, and IWM probably is ready to push up a lot higher. When it does, because like this is every single time we just push up that much higher, usually IWM catches up, and I think we're at that conjuncture where we're about to have that happen. So the pop could be quite powerful based on looking at the previous cycles, and it does look like there's enough global liquidity and there's enough money on the large cap stocks. Like the Russell 2000, like the entire market cap for Russell 2000 actually is not that big, so actually it doesn't require that much fun to really try to push the Russell 2000 up that much higher. And if the Russell 2000, if the small caps go up a lot higher, that's when you really start to get like this crazy risk on sentiment, And a lot of people are saying, oh, the only reason why it ran up so much higher is because the Fed just kept on printing money, and that's not normal. Well, that's not the case, because you look at history, like IWM and the S&P 500, they just keep going higher over time. Why is that? Is it because the Fed is making like unsustainable money printing? Like it's all the Fed's fault? Like maybe it is. But the entire reason for our let me just pull back up here. Instead of doing that, I'm going to do something a little bit fancier. I'm going to show this. I'm probably going to call it a day. Get rid of this chart right there. Just look at the monthly. And this is the IWM since its inception. I'm gonna add something here, which is the U.S. money supply. And you can see that the IWM basically just follows the money supply. Whenever IWM is underneath the M2 money supply, that's the time to buy. Like that was the time to buy during COVID. That was the time to buy during this consolidation zone over here, because overall it just looks like it just wants to keep going up with money supply. That's what it's doing. Yeah, I know. Like you're talking about most stock. Yeah, so that's another argument too. Like is IWM always underperforming S&P 500? That's a question, right? Let's look at Russell over SPX. Has that always been the case? I'm going to shut this thing off. No, that has not always been the case, because you're talking about from the year like 1999 all the way up to like 2011. Russell, the small caps actually way outperform the large caps. and it was outperforming large caps so much that it was causing a big bearish divergence that eventually played out for like 10 years, right? Right now, the Russell has been underperforming the S&P 500 for closer to a decade, and now you have this big giant bullish divergence that's building up. So what do you think is going to happen? Do you think it's just keep on plumbing down a lot further? Doesn't look like it based on the technicals, you know. One more for you. I was asked about Solana. If you ask me about Solana, I'm just going to say that, this is, let me change that here a little bit. You asked me about Solana. I'm going to say I think it's going higher. I think it's consolidating. I'll tell you what the potential risk levels are. I'm going to get rid of the RSI over here. I'm going to do a Fibonacci level from the all-time high to the cycle low. And that's kind of a general guideline in terms of where I like to find targets together with the scan chart that I have. My suspicion for this cycle, and I don't know when it's going to hit, I think it's possible for it to hit 600 to 900. I think it's a possibility. And yeah, I mean, it could even hit higher. I don't know. But I think that is consolidated here enough. This chart basically looks like CleanSparks. this basically looks like the CleanSpark chart, right? And that's also a reflection in terms of what you think global liquidity is doing. It's just consolidating sideways. These two charts look the same. So I have a hard time saying if you're bullish on one, you're not bullish on the other. I do suspect that, yeah, that's going to be my target. I'm not going to say that it's going to hit, but if you ask me for like a reasonable technical target, I think anywhere from 600 to 800 is achievable, and it could hit 4 digits, but I do not guarantee any of that. So, I don't know the answer to that question about leverage trade on Russell through URTY. Is that double leverage? I use TNA. First of all, though, I do want to point out, like, if you get into TNA, which is triple leverage, Russell, don't think of it as like a long-term play because Russell is so volatile. You're going to end up having a lot of decay. So if you buy TNA, you're really doing it for a trade, because price for TNA had done nothing since 2013, when the Russell had gone up a lot more since 2013, right? Like, you're talking about almost like 100% since 2013 because of decay. So if you're going to enter these like play where it's like double leverage, triple leverage, make sure you play the cycle and make sure that you are looking for signs for exhaustion. And the way to look for signs of exhaustion, let me see. Where are you? There you are. One thing to look for signs of exhaustion is like when price goes sideways for like a year, when whales are leaving, that's probably exhaustion. When price like went sideways for like a whole year and the whales are leaving, that's probably exhaustion, you know. Let me see if the RSI is able to tell you anything. Yeah, when price went sideways and RSI just goes down, that's a sign for exhaustion, you know. Over here, you don't really have that as a warning sign, so it's not always going to play out. But when price went sideways and you have RSI going down, that's a sign for exhaustion. So yeah, I think right now you have RSI kind of pointing up. We're not anywhere near being overbought. So yeah, I think great things are probably going to come relatively soon. I gotcha. Thanks, Margin Call. You're answering a lot of questions that I have that I don't know. Yes, and it is possible that they might end up, approving Solana ETF, but one step at a time. I do think that, like Raoul Paul, I don't know if you guys like him or not. He's basically saying that ETH is like Bitcoin from last for this cycle, and Solana is like Ethereum for like this cycle in terms of what he thinks. So I think there might be some truth to that. I think both are probably going to end up doing pretty decent. I'm more into Ethereum because I just do more technicals and stuff like that with it. But Solana looks pretty decent. So, all right, past 5. Thank you so much for joining on this last minute live chat, live stream, whatever you call it. Thanks for joining, guys. You guys have the great rest of the weekend. Bye.